Hey everyone, welcome back to Financial Freedom by 40. My name is Kelly, and today I'm answering some of your questions. So, one of the questions that I had recently was what criteria do we use to purchase our rental properties? Or did we use to purchase our rental properties? We haven't purchased one for a while. So, first of all, I'd say just a bit of a disclaimer. So, this is not intended to be financial advice for you. I'm just talking about the situation that we're in and what's worked for us so far. And in terms of the criteria, there's no one size fits all. And there's even not even one size fits all for us. So it changes as time goes on. So what's good for you at the start might not be so good for you later on. Depending on your personal goals and what you want to achieve, there's going to be different types of properties that you're going to buy. But the question that I had was sort of asking what criteria we use. So where do we buy? What kind of houses do we buy? Do we buy in rural areas or main centres? What's our strategy for buying properties? Now, some of the things that we consider. So I would say that the number one thing that we've considered is the cash flow of the property. So one of the main things you need to take into consideration is cash flow for us. So what do I mean by cash flow? So I mean by how much money that the property is generating, and in particular, how much money is left over after you've paid all of the expenses. So for us, we wanted to make sure that there was that the property has basically covered their own costs. So we didn't want to have to be topping the properties up lots of money each week. So that's a factor to consider. And that was really important for us, and also really important in enabling us to grow a larger portfolio, because if we had to keep putting money in out of our own pocket every week, we wouldn't have the cash flow to be able to continue to grow that portfolio. So ideally, what we wanted when we looked for properties is properties that at the very least cover their own costs, and preferably that they also generate a bit of extra income on each property, or at least that they have the potential to generate enough income to cover their costs in the very, very short term. And of course, in the longer term, with our goal being financial freedom, we want the properties to be able to generate a really good amount of cash flow to be able to replace our income. So cash flow is a really, really important thing. I would say that, for us, while we bought with cash flow in mind, initially our primary focus was to buy capital growth properties so that we had good capital growth, with the goal being sort of a longer term goal initially. So initially we thought about buying to sell down the track when it comes to retirement. So the idea would be that you hold those properties for a long, long time, but then when you get a little bit closer to retirement age, so we were originally thinking we'd both be working well into, maybe 65 or something like that. The intention was to hold those properties for the long term, and then maybe sell one or two of them further down the track, pay off all the debt, so that we had that really good income coming in from the properties. So at the moment, we're, still holding all of those properties. So what we've learned over time is that probably we should have, if we had wanted to generate the cash flow sooner. So we hadn't sort of thought that financial freedom would be the goal at the outset, but or for our financial freedom at a younger age would be the goal at the outset. So our focus was that long-term goal of retirement, whereas now our focus is much more on creating the income in the short term. So ideally, what we would have done would have been to have bought higher yielding, so higher cash flow properties earlier on, probably in those more regional areas. Now, in terms of where we buy, so to start with, we were trying to build a portfolio while also having very, very young children. So I've mentioned in other videos that, when we bought our first property, our oldest son was only a couple of months old. We were building that portfolio, while our children were very, very small. So being able to renovate those properties is often what managed to get the deal across the line, so that we were buying houses that were to renovate and revalue. So but we couldn't get the numbers to work all the time if we had to get builders and that kind of thing, and builders, tradies, painters, all of the tradies to do all of the work. We have had tradies do some of the work, but not all of the work. So And in a couple of the cases, if we hadn't have done the majority of the work, the deal just wouldn't have worked for us. So given that we had a young family, it was really important that the properties were quite close to us so that we could do the renovations ourselves. So we live in Auckland in New Zealand. The majority of the properties that we have bought have been in Auckland, because that's made it easier for us to, from a practical sense. We did buy 2 also in Hamilton, which is only a couple of hours drive from where we are. So it did still mean that we were able to drive there and do the renovations. Although in the long-term management of that property, we have tended to have tradies do more of the work between tenancies and that kind of thing, because it is a little bit harder for us to get to them. We have nothing against buying in the regions. We definitely would be looking to the regions if we were to buy again anytime soon, and that's probably where we'll look to put our money when we eventually do sell, just so that we can try and build up some cash flow. So yeah, I would say the next properties for us we'll be looking more regional. We have looked in places like Invercargill and Rotorua just to try and get the slightly higher cash flowing properties than the ones you do tend to get in the main centres. I mean, alternatively, we could do something like our house or our property in Hamilton, where there's 2 units on there. And that one, we managed to get the cash flow up a bit more by converting an existing sleep out into a freestanding minor dwelling. We did that all legally through council, etc. So while there was a cost to that, it meant the cash flow was a lot higher. So again, we'd have to look for something more creative if we wanted to do something in the bigger centres. Now, one of the other factors that's been really, really important to us is buying houses that are structurally sound, and also, I would add to that, fairly easy to keep maintained. So in terms of structural things, you know, it's really important to make sure that you've got a really sound house in terms of like water tightness and framing and, you know, all of those sorts of things, to make sure that you've got a good solid house, good foundations, those kind of things. So we always get a building inspection done when we're looking at buying houses, to make sure all of those things are really good. The building inspector that we use does a moisture test as part of the inspection. So that just makes sure that you don't have any issues like leaky buildings and those kind of things. So again, you know, really important part of the structural element. In terms of the ongoing maintenance, we like to try and choose properties that are fairly easy to keep maintained. Main reason for that really is that it just prevents the kind of disruption with having to keep going in and doing things while there's tenants in place. So yeah, try and buy houses that are easy to maintain. So ones like our own home is a bungalow, weatherboard bungalow, requires a lot of painting. So we've tended to stay away from that kind of dwelling for our rental properties, going for things that tend to be lower maintenance. And another thing that we've found that's really, really helpful in terms of keeping the in terms of the maintenance is just, we tend to do a really big renovation at the start. And so even if the house is quite poorly maintained when we buy it, provided we can sort of bring it up to a good standard of renovation by doing an initial renovation when we purchase it, then we're not too worried by the cosmetic side of things. So the gardens can be really overgrown, the paint might be really bad. You know, roofs can be fixed. We've bought a couple of houses that have the roofs have been quite poor condition. So, but the structure underneath has been fine. So that's meant that, you know, even though the roof might be a bit rusty and need replacing, if we can factor the cost of the roof replacement in to our numbers when we do our initial sort of purchase calculations and renovation calculations, then that doesn't put us off either. So just because there's cosmetic stuff, that's not a worry. All of that stuff can be fixed, and often that's what makes it quite a good deal as an investor, is that you can put that work in that perhaps somebody else hasn't been prepared to do, and so that helps you with your revaluation, and also helps you to improve your tenantability of the property. So I've covered those things. The other really important thing too that we factor in is the demand for the type of property in the area you're looking to buy. So, you know, we've tended to stick to 3-bedroom dwellings, family dwellings, because we've sort of bought in the kind of suburbs where family houses are in demand. So you can sort of do your research, check, you know, find out from property managers in the area. You can look on the tenancy services thing and see how many bonds have been lodged in different categories for, you know, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 1-bedroom, whatever, to see what's in demand. We did find in our Hamilton property, so where we've got two houses on the one site, one being a one-bedroom unit, that there's a lot of demand for those one-bedroom units in that area. That unit has been tenanted almost like almost no vacancy, like maybe a couple of days here and there between tenants, but it's almost always back-to-back tenancies for that. And we've got really good money for that. So, you know, like that one, it sort of showed to us, well, you know, do your research in the area, find out what's the demand. You know, we might have been better off to have looked at buying a series of one-bedroom units in that area, because the demand was so high for that. Or in future, you know, if we were to do another property in that area, I would be, you know, having another look to see whether the one bedrooms are still high in demand, and maybe looking at buying a piece of property that you could put a series of smaller units on, rather than going for the 3-bedroom dwelling in that area. Just because even though we've had good tenantability on the 3-bedroom dwelling, the 1-bedroom has been, you know, super duper. So yeah, so that kind of thing is good to take into consideration too. And I kind of covered this a bit at the start, but whatever you buy, it's a really good idea to make sure that it fits in with your goals. And you might need to change your strategy if your goals change like ours did. So, you know, always looking at what you want to get out of the property. You know, do you need the cash flow? Are you looking for capital growth? You know, do you need, like us, to have houses that are close to you so that you can actually manage the renovations yourself? Like, those kind of things are really important. So checking that the property you're looking at actually fits within your overall goals. So I think that covers off our main criteria. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me a comment. I'm happy to do another video to answer any questions. And otherwise, look forward to seeing you in the next video. And I'd be really, really grateful if you could just hit the little subscribe button, and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of the videos. Hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.